Hi, welcome back. So now we're going to start module 2, in which we're going to deal with the abstract. As I have already said, that we are going to deal with each section in the order in which it appears and not in the order that you will write it. So to begin with, as always, we are going to have a look at the content and focus of this section. And then we're going to be looking at different streamlining tricks, devices to eliminate unnecessary words, which is of prime importance in the abstract because the abstract is necessarily short. Finally, we will be doing some tasks, some of which we will do during the video session and others that you will complete in your own time. So here we have a little table showing the different components that should appear in the abstract. As you know, an abstract could be between 150 and 250 words, depending on the journal, perhaps exceptionally 300 words. And some journals often request that the abstract be divided into sections with subheadings. Others don't, but in any event, this is general information and should be followed when writing up your abstract. So we should start off with the background, which is not always essential, but perhaps just a very brief introductory sentence with some background. Then, of course, the objectives or your hypothesis. Why did I study this? Your methods. How did I study this? Your results. What did I find? And the conclusion, significance, or impact of the study. So what does this mean? Sadly, it's often the only part of your work that people are going to read. And unless you write a really good abstract, it probably will be the only part. This is your window of opportunity to catch your reader and to make your study sound interesting. As you know, in this era of internet, people can have access, free access to your abstract, and then if you manage to convince them that your study is worth reading about, they will go on to read the whole study, which takes a great deal more effort, time, and maybe even money in some cases. Okay, so this is our opportunity to catch our reader and to make our study sound interesting, exciting, and also give a clear picture of what exactly we are doing, what we have done, and what we have found, and the importance of this. Okay, so we have to bridge this gap and get our message across to our potential reader very clearly, concisely, and effectively. So here I have listed a few phrases that you could use to introduce each part, okay? If each section or component of your abstract is not introduced by a subheading, then perhaps you could signal the different components using, for example, some of these expressions or others, okay? So the study was performed to explore or aimed to. We investigated a new method for. Then how did you do this, to do so, or to shed light on this okay? Other discourse markers that you could use to link the different ideas together, and then other expressions to show that we have moved on to speak about our results, our data, and the conclusion or the significance of our study at the end. Okay, so these could be useful to indicate the different components of our abstract and provide or create some flow between the different components. Other pieces of advice say that that we should not use abbreviations in an abstract unless necessary. For example, if we are speaking about a method that is has a very long name and it's normally abbreviated, then we could mention it the first time and then just use the abbreviation. Other abbreviations that are obviously common and well known, like DNA, could be used, but the general rule is not to use abbreviations. Remember what we saw about the tenses, that we should use the present tense to say what is known and the past tense to say what we did and what we found. Okay, so be careful with that in the abstract too. All right, so after looking at this advice, we are going to have a look at an abstract, and I would like you to identify the different parts and think how it could be improved, see if it follows this advice given, and if not, how you could improve it. Okay, so here is the abstract. Obviously, you have this abstract in your tasks, and perhaps it will be more comfortable for you to work with that document rather than with the slide here. In any event, please pause the video, okay? Read this abstract. You have the reference here, and identify the background, the objectives, the method, the results, the conclusion, and check the tenses. Okay, so as I say, please pause the video and take some time to read this, identify the different components, and think about how you could improve by reorganizing or using some reference, some sentences to show that you, or to introduce the different parts of your text, okay, to help your reader follow your argument. Okay, so please pause the video. Okay, so I assume you have had time to do that, and let's have a look at what we have done here. To help you, I have highlighted the different components in different colors. So we can see that we start off here with the general background. Litter plays a crucial role in the formation of soil organic carbon and potentially affects different pools in the context of soil carbon cycle. Okay, so we just have one sentence there that provides a general background. Then this is the gap, okay? To improve knowledge and understanding with respect to the dynamics of carbon in coffee and cocoa cropping systems, there is a need to develop a mechanistic model to explain the formation of carbon, especially in different backgrounds of soil, climate, and agronomic management. Okay, so now we're saying what we're doing here. And here we have our method and objectives, and they are somewhat mixed up. Okay, so I have highlighted here and here, okay, but we also have a lot of text here that we need to work through with extremely long sentences. Okay, I can see a very long sentence here. Okay, that could be improved. Then we have basically our results and the conclusions. Okay, I don't know whether you did that in your task and whether you came up with the same analysis as I did. Okay, but now what I want you to do again is to pause the video, look at that, and think how you could make changes there to improve that. Okay. So here in my next slide, we have a working copy where I have tracked my changes. It looks a little bit of a mess, right? So of course, perhaps you should pause the video here and have a look at what I've done. But you can see that I have reorganized the text in a certain way. And I have also introduced some expressions to highlight the different parts of the text to help my reader follow my argument. I have also made changes, for example, to the tenses because there were some mistakes there, okay? And what we come up with when we accept all those changes and again highlight everything is the background, which I have now included extra information, so it's a little bit more comprehensive. Then here we have our objectives clearly introduced with this study, 1 investigated and 2 developed, both in the past tense, and we can see investigated and developed. Then we have to join these 2 ideas to do so. And here we have our method and we have put it in the past tense, okay? And I have begun the little section on the results with data analysis indicated to clearly show that now we're moving on to discuss our results, okay? And again, changing to the past tense because we are speaking about our study, our results, what we found, okay? And finally, the conclusion. So if you'd like to pause the video and have a look at that, I don't know whether you came up with something similar, but I hope that you will agree that this is an improved text, okay? If you would like to go back and read the original text and then this text, I think that you will find that this text is easier to follow, okay? All right, so the title. I think I mentioned in the last module that research has shown that a short title is more successful in attracting readers. So without compromising our message, we need to find a way to convey our study in a short, sexy title, something that is appealing, something that will attract our readers. This is not easy. I know it's not easy, and in some papers it is almost impossible, but we have to give it a go, all right? The title to the paper that we just saw, the abstract 2, used noun phrases. And in fact, the title was Short-Term Microclimate Variation and Leaf Litter-Derived Soil Organic Compound, carbon. It's a bit of a mouthful if we read it, okay? But it also in our virtual reality world, where we need to use keywords and everybody's using their hashtags, okay? Here we can see that they have used noun phrases with minimum language here to convey their message in a kind of telegraphic style, okay? To come up with a short title that kind of gives all the elements of their study. We could also use gerunds if we maybe don't like that because it's a bit of a mouthful. Understanding litter-derived soil organic carbon in different microclimates, okay? I personally prefer that. Although this often also depends on the journal. Often the editor will suggest a title, okay, which is in line with their style, okay? So most importantly, it has to be a true reflection of what you've done, what your study is about. It should be short, and it's quite a creative process and can take quite a long time. Okay, to come up with the right thing. It's like naming your baby. Okay, after all that effort, you want to get it right. Okay, so here we have another example. We have a study of the transmission, assemblage and functions of the gut microbiota in a cohort of young children treated with antibiotics. So we can see here that they have used, for example, articles, prepositions, that can be eliminated. We don't want them in our title, or at least just minimum use, okay? And we could kind of get rid of those and come up with something like unraveling gut microbiota transmission, assemblage and functions in young children under antibiotic treatment. Okay, unraveling, that's a nice word. We can use thesaurus, for example, to look for synonyms, to try to expand our vocabulary and come up with nice words. We can also, of course, look at other titles to get ideas of what's out there and the kind of thing that is attractive. Okay. All right, so the next part is related to streamlining. First, this use of the, of, which we are going to try to minimize, okay? So remember that we are in the context of the abstract. We want to provide maximum information in a minimum of words. So the and of are examples that can often be eliminated, and what's more, in doing so, we often improve the style, okay? So often we use a noun. The detection of antibodies was performed by PCR, okay, because we consider it's more formal or academic sounding, but in fact, to write antibodies were detected by PCR would be much more efficient and effective. We have another example. The analysis of multilocus markers allowed the identification of potential hybrids and their discrimination from non-hybrid strains. Okay, again, we can just change that. We can use the verb to analyze and to identify. Multilocus markers were analyzed to identify potential hybrids and discriminate them from non-hybrid strains. And other expressions like the distribution of the population. This is a typical example of perhaps a translation from another language, because in English it would be much more natural or common just to say population distribution. Although I would actually point out in this regard that it's not always possible, okay? We could obviously, instead of saying the distribution of the population, say population distribution, or instead of the manufacturers of cars, say car manufacturers, but there are some exceptions. So, for example, we speak about the speed of sound or the speed of light, not sound speed or light speed. And sometimes there is a difference in meaning, which may or may not be important. Okay, so my question to you is a wine glass, excuse me, the same as a glass of wine? Because here we have a wine glass that is in fact a glass of water. So as far as I'm concerned, that's an important difference, because I prefer a glass of wine. Okay, so this is a little trick, a little device that we are now going to put into practice, okay? As I've already said, that by using this noun, the analysis of, we necessitate the use of another verb, so here perform, okay? And it would be much clearer, simpler, more concise. Here, instead of putting the analysis of samples was performed in triplicate, to say samples were analysed in triplicate, or we analysed samples in triplicate, if you want to use the active rather than the passive. Another example, the collection of seeds and leaves was done throughout the experiment. So let's change the focus. Seeds and leaves were collected throughout the experiment, or we collected seeds and leaves throughout the experiment. The inactivation of enzymes was achieved by high temperatures. Enzymes were inactivated by high temperatures. Okay? Okay, so here we have a little task for you to do. And I would like you to follow the examples that you have just seen here, to rewrite these sentences and eliminate all these underlined expressions and change these nouns into verbs, and in doing so, get rid of this second verb and create a shorter and more concise, effective sentence. So please pause the video, don't cheat, and carry out the task, and then turn me on again, so to speak, to check if you have the same answers as I do. Okay, so let's have a look at the first one. The discovery of penicillin was made by Alexander Fleming in 1928. Penicillin was discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928. Or if you want to focus on Fleming, Fleming discovered penicillin in 1928. The incubation of cells was made at 38 degrees for 3 hours. Cells were incubated at 38 degrees for 3 hours. The appearance of volcanoes is common along the faults in the Earth's surface. What did you do with this one? Volcanoes commonly appear along the faults in the Earth's surface. The fourth, the isolation of infected cells was performed twice a week. Infected cells were isolated twice weekly. And finally, the effects of drought on agriculture were serious. The drought seriously affected agriculture, or agriculture was seriously affected by drought. Okay, so you can see that's not difficult. It's just a question of recognizing this kind of expression and changing it or avoiding it, okay? If you've already written something, it could be quite easy. You could just kind of do a word search for off and see if you have done this and you can change it, okay? Or if you are writing, just try to think about that and avoid it, okay? So now we are moving from the sentence level to the paragraph level, and I would like you again to pause the video, and you have a mini abstract here about enzyme inactivation using some method called high hydrostatic pressure, okay? And I would like you to pause the video and to look at those underlined expressions, to rewrite the abstract so that you do not, so that you avoid those expressions. And I would like you to try to get this abstract down from 148 words to at least, or at most, 120 words, okay? So pause the video again, please, and carry out this task. As I say, you should have downloaded these tasks onto your computer and be able to work with them in a Word document rather than from my slide. Okay? So I assume that you paused the video, you have carried out the task. As always, don't forget to hand in your tasks to me, but now we'll have a look at my solution. All right, and I have here harmful bacteria in dairy fruit beverages can pose a serious problem, while enzyme activity can cause spoilage. This study aims to test the inactivation kinetics of high hydrostatic pressure, HHP, to inactivate enzymes and eliminate salmonella and listeria in these beverages. Pressures and temperatures in the domain of 500 to 700 megapascals and 25 to 65 degrees centigrade were combined, and enzyme inactivation was recorded at different temperatures in the beverage. 4 isoenzymes with different high pressure stabilities were also observed. Our results indicated that these bacteria were eliminated by the HHP treatment, and the isoenzymes were successfully inactivated at the pressures and temperatures assayed. These results prove HHP is suitable to treat dairy fruit beverages and thus conform to current food safety regulation. Okay, so I don't know whether you had something else, whether you managed to reduce it more. As we said, when we repeat something numerous times, then we can use the abbreviation without problems. We have identified it the first time or defined it the first time, and after that it is unnecessary. Okay, and I got mine down to 118 words. What about you? Okay, so another little trick or device or tool, omitting relative pronouns. We're going to be doing a lot more work on relative pronouns in this course. This is just one specific point related to relative pronouns where we can omit them, okay? And this, as we are working in the context of the abstract, is important because we need to minimize the number of words, okay? So that, which, who are relative pronouns that we can do away with, we can eliminate them sometimes. Okay, so we have here the patients who participated in the study, blah, blah, blah. Here we have an active sentence with an active subject, and we can get rid of who and change this to the present participle or gerund. The patients participating in the study. Instead of the rats that were fed probiotics, okay, which is passive, we can see it's a passive structure, we can just use the past participle. The rats fed probiotic, or probiotic fed rats. Okay, so this is a little trick that we can employ. Here I have put it in table form to make it easier for you to see. So here we have a defining relative clause, that, and it is in the active, so we can change it to the present participle or gerund. The deer that live in the forest are less prone to disease. Deer living in the forest are less prone to disease. And if it's non-defining, remember that with non-defining, we will use which or who, not that. We can, again, replace it using the gerund if it's in the active voice. Just remember to include the comma. This novel technology, which uses photosensitive cells, is cheap and reliable. This novel technology using photosensitive cells is cheap and reliable. Okay, so that gives us some examples in active sentences. And here are some more examples in passive sentences where we can replace the relative pronoun by just using the past participle. The strains that are detected by PCR will be targeted. The strains detected by PCR will be targeted. And non-defining, again, it's exactly the same. Just remember to include the comma. This novel technology, which is based on photosensitive cells, is cheap and reliable. This novel technology based on photosensitive cells is cheap and reliable. Okay, so you have these in your handouts for you to refer to. And again, if you need to reduce words, you can look for that, which, who, and then hone in, see if you can replace them in this way. So here we have a task, 2.3, and I would like you, as before, please to pause the video and to check, is this active, is this passive, how can I reduce this to make a shorter sentence, okay? So pause the video, please, carry out the task, and then we'll have a look at it together. Okay, so I assume that you have carried out the task. Let's have a look at the solutions. So the group that had been inoculated with T6, we can write just the group inoculated with T6 proved immune to the virus. Number 2, we followed the protocol that had been recommended by the manufacturer. How many times have you seen that sentence? We followed the protocol recommended by the manufacturer. 3, the lambs that ate at 3-hour intervals gained weight more quickly. This is inactive. The lambs eating at 3-hour intervals gained weight more quickly. 4, the seedlings that grew faster than the others had wide leaves. The seedlings growing faster than the others had wide leaves. 5, eels which originate in the Sargasso Sea float on warm ocean currents to Europe. Eels originating in the Sargasso Sea float on warm ocean currents to Europe. And finally, people who had suffered from stress were more likely to fall ill. People having suffered from stress were more likely to fall ill. Okay, in this last example, perhaps you have put, I imagine people suffering from stress were more likely to fall ill. It's fine. I was just wanted to show you here that this is possible to keep it in the perfect form to show that it was something prior or previous, okay? That both are fine, all right? Okay, so that was quite easy. I'm sure you got the hang of that quite quickly. So now this question of 1 word instead of 3. I have drawn up a couple of tables. You will probably find similar information tables in other sources, okay? Often we use these kind of expressions without thinking, the majority of, a large number of, okay? And they're clumsy, they're not nice, and they use up a lot of space, okay? So often we can replace them. So instead of saying a majority of people, we could say most people. Instead of saying a large number of studies, many studies, numerous studies, various studies. Instead of are in accordance with, agree with, okay? And we have some other examples here that we could replace, okay? Perhaps you'd like to pause the video and look at them before I go on to the next slide, which has more examples. Okay, here we have more examples. Rather than have an effect on, affect, then here we have these kind of expressions of mentioned above, above mentioned, okay? We also have these kinds of expressions like onset, outset, the outbreak in English, okay, which are often used rather than the start of, the initiation of, okay, that sounds a bit religious or something. And probably you've seen this word outbreak a lot recently in the context of COVID. Then other strange expressions, economically interesting, why not just profitable? Gives rise to an increase, it increases, or it raises. We'll have a look at that difference between rise and raise later on. And then all of these things of can be, cannot be. Often we can resort to the use of prefixes and suffixes to express the same idea. So rather than can be avoided, it is avoidable. Can be prevented, it's preventable. Cannot be prevented, it's unpreventable. We're going to have a look at this question of positive and negative in another module, but it's also a very useful way to create clearer and more concise sentences. So, taking those notes into consideration, we have a couple of examples here which can be improved in this respect. I don't know if you want to try them on your own or just see them as ways of example. If you want to try them on your own first, pause the video. If not, just carry on. The majority, of less common diseases suffer from a lack of research due to the fact that they are not economically interesting to pharmaceutical companies. So how could we rewrite this? Rare diseases are seldom researched by pharma as they are not profitable, or as they are unprofitable. Pharmaceutical companies seldom research rare diseases as they lack profitability. Okay? The next one, our results are in accordance with others that have been published previously, showing that employability has a direct effect on the mobility of the workforce. Okay? We could rewrite that as our results agree with the literature showing that employability directly affects workforce mobility. Okay, so we can see that these can be written in much more concise and reader-friendly way that is also far more stylistic. So now over to you. We have a task 2.4 where I would encourage you to please pause the video and to carry out the task, okay? Says that there is not a lot of information on the diseases which can be cured that occur frequently in developing countries. Okay, so have a look at these, please, and then we'll come back and have a look at the possible solutions. Okay, so let's look at the alternative to that. Rather than this first very strange and clumsy sentence, we could write information is lacking on common curable diseases in developing countries. The second one, a large number of studies have approximately calculated the amount of money that is spent by teenagers online due to the fact that they are not supervised properly by their parents. Beware parents. How could we rewrite that? Many studies have estimated the money spent by teenagers online due to the lack of proper parental supervision. Or, many studies have estimated the money spent by teenagers because proper parental supervision is lacking. And the last one, the initiation of the disease can be avoided by an increase in the ingestion of vitamin C. Disease onset is avoidable by increasing vitamin C ingestion. Okay, so we can see that in all cases we can improve on these sentences and create shorter and more concise, reader-friendly texts. So that brings me to the end of this module 2. Okay, I would like you to have a look at your tasks. As I say, we just do a few tasks during the video session, but you have a number of tasks that you can practice with, and I urge you to carry out the tasks in order to gain maximum benefit from this course, because it's one thing just to listen to me in the video and to see me carrying out these little tricks, but it's another for you to actually do it yourself, okay? Because the learning process requires for you to actually go through those mechanisms of doing it on your own. And as always, please hand in those tasks through the platform, and I will send you personalized feedback, suggestions, comments, and so on. So that brings me to the end of module 2. Thank you for your attention, and bye for now.